So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the RGM Experience podcast. A podcast, ladies and gentlemen, where we delve into the grassroots music industry and beyond and find interesting people within it. I'm here bothering you again for another week with an amazing guest, Ian Britt. Morning, mate.
Good morning, Carl.
Yeah,
Are you well?
I am well, mate. I am well, and I want to get better, and I'll come to that in a bit.
Okay.
So, but so for you, Ian, I've known about Ian, but we're both from Sheffield. You're living in Sheffield at the minute. You've had this amazing life of music, and you moved into a different stage of your life as a life coach as well. That I'm absolutely fascinated to talk about every aspect of it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to build it up, mate. Can you feel the energy? Like I'm trying to get people
Like, do,
excited
do
for
you know Tony Robbins?
it. Go
Do you know,
on.
do you know the life coach Tony Robbins?
No, I thought not him out of time, team.
Is it? Oh no. He's like this giant. He's sort of seen as the greatest of all time life coaches from America. But a big thing of him is like he gets everybody. "Wah, yeah, come on.
Yeah. Oh, I
So
can't do that as a Yorkshireman. I can't go off like that.
English people, yeah, find it. The thing about that, it does help. Like the somatic experience of getting your body feeling and moving in a different way
Yeah.
does help. But I think American people are all right with it. Like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to keep the energy up, mate. I'm stood up. I'm here, excited, and as I say, as a Yorkshireman, it don't come naturally to me that kind of stuff. But
No,
what a way to start an episode though. To try, yeah. We've got to try.
we have got to try. Yeah.
So, Ian, mate, you've had a massive, long industry career in the music industry. So, introduce us to yourself for the people that are watching this that aren't sure who Ian Britt is yet. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and.
Which you know what? So that's. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, it's fine. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So this leads me to a recent story. I'm from Sheffield, but I studied music in Manchester years and years ago, and then I was signed straight out of uni. I went to Salford Uni, and recently, so I've got an amazing friend called Lily. Her music thing is Searching for Lil. She's from Dronfield, just around the corner, but she's just graduated in sound tech in Manchester, and I was in Manchester a couple of months ago doing some work with the coaching, and we met up for a drink, and I had some mushroom chocolate left. And she'd never done it. And I was like, do you want to do some? I didn't think there was going to be enough to get high, but we got high. We definitely
Yeah.
got high. And we were right on the edge of town where just across the river from Salford. So I dragged her across the river and like walked around my past, basically. Poor thing. And the building that I studied music in was this I think it was like a chemical plant or something, but it was halfway through ripping it down. And I mean, I couldn't believe they hadn't kept it forever and put a blue plaque of my name on it. But
Yes. Okay.
and it was like, because I was a little bit high on mushrooms, I mean, I see everything in a profound sense anyway, most of the time. It's exhausting, but and I was like, this is so significant that my past is because the last 2 years and the last 10 years, really, me as a musician has been slowly, it's not dead. I'm still a musician, but it's been changing and like the kind of some of the foundations are sort of like getting washed away. So I got signed out of uni about 2003. So my debut album as a singer-songwriter and signed to a little label in London called Jalapeno that I think they're still going in Brighton now. But so my debut album came out in 2005. Mucked around with that. That was when I lived in Manchester, had management in Manchester. And then that kind of fell through. I recorded an EP. Then that EP had one. Well, so I randomly started gigging a lot in Holland, like a lot, 3 or 4 times a year. I was there for like 2 or 3 weeks, a month, whatever. So, and Holland is much more accessible to things like radio. I had a plugger, I had an agent, I had management over there. I did some quite big support gigs in like massive venues around the place. And then one of the songs got on a couple of hit shows in America, the L Word and Parenthood. And so on the back of that, I was on some huge Spotify playlists. So one of my tracks has got like nearly 17 million hits on the back of that. And the whole time I was just like, it was what I was so obsessed with trying to become famous or whatever it was. I don't know. Like, well, it was a very ego-driven thing. I mean, if we want to start getting into the coaching and the inner world stuff, it was trying to look for external validation, but also it was the thing that I was good at. It was the thing that I enjoy. I mean, I'm sat in my studio now and I've got like really decent speakers and decent guitars, and I love making music, but it was exhausting. And where it kind of all, well, where it all changed was 11 years ago. My mum passed away a month before my nan had passed away, and the same week my mum had passed away, I split up with someone that I'd been with for 4 years, and that had been quite a difficult relationship, especially towards the end. And then, like, it was all going shit with my dad. My parents had split up. My mum passed away, and it was just shit with my dad. And then I got really ill with chronic fatigue. And then I moved to London, and I was trying to build a new life. And the thing where it really changed for me, so I had like slightly take a step back. Just before I moved to London, I'd signed to a small record label in Sheffield, and I had this album like waiting in the wings, but the label were very sticky, and some of the stuff they were doing wasn't quite up to the standard that I wanted after everything that I'd built to that point. And then I got in like a 10-month legal dispute with the label, and it just fucking killed it. Like, I literally, because I was really ill all the time with this fatigue, I was trying to process like the split with this girl. I was trying to process my mum. I was trying to process the family. I felt so unsafe in my being, which is why where the fatigue comes from. We'll get to that later. But um, I so I fought for this album, and then I was just like, when I got it back, it was literally I got a phone call, and it's like we wore him down. I found this incredible guy who wasn't even a lawyer. He was just like he was a North London Cockney, like Jewish guy who had the spiel, and he just browbeat this label down. And I just got this. I mean, thank God, because I got the album back. But at that point, I was like, I don't even care anymore. And I'd done maybe one or two. So when I moved to London, I started doing covers gigs because you can make a lot of money singing Wonderwall to drunk people in pubs. I mean, quids in. And I'd done like one or two, I think I did one gig of my stuff. And I was always like, whenever I did my gigs, I was like, yeah, everybody, look, look, look. And I was like, I was almost side on. And I was like, why am I making people look at me? I don't get this. Something had really changed in me. So yeah, that's kind of where it started to unravel. And since then, so my mum died 11 years ago. And very quickly, the kind of fatigue kicked in. Less than a year later, I was in London. And then it was like, what is this thing that I'm dealing with? This chronic illness, basically. So I was surviving. And for about probably another, like, so I was trying to figure this record label thing out. I was just angry at this, whatever this limiting my body was. And then I realized it was trying to tell me something. So I then, because I had some money off the back of selling my mum's house, I've always been time rich with how I've managed my life. So I was just like, need to figure this out. And I started, so this is where the coaching, I didn't know that at the time, but I started to go hard on myself. Like, where is this coming from? Or how do I heal myself? And I did everything from like talk like traditional talking therapy to like plant medicine, ayahuasca, cambo, which is this like poison frog where you something to do with your lymphatic system, and you shit yourself and you throw up everywhere, and everything in between. I did retreats, read every single book. So for the last 10 years, I've been in this like university of understanding what it is to be a person. Because when you've got something like, if you're a bit, I've always had depression through my adult life as well. But if you're just depressed or a bit anxious, you can, and I am not downsizing that because those things are fucking horrible, but you can still kind of get on with your life. But with fatigue, there's no way out of it. And actually, when the chips are down, you feel even worse. So it was like I could never stop. I was like constant. I became like a total detective all the time. What's this? What's this? And then when you start looking into yourself, wherever you look, you find more. And with the human condition, like there's so many different threads. And I would read this book and I would understand a little bit about that. And I would do this course and I would understand a bit about that. And I'd do like, I don't know, kind of like theta healing with someone, and then you'd be like, oh my god, there's this other energetic world, and like, oh, I've just discovered my inner child, and the inner child is like upset because of this stuff that happened when I was less than what, like pre-verbal or whatever. So, and then I found this is a bit of a diatribe, so bear with me, but I found this guy. So I was learning all these sort of like nebulous things about me, uh linked with chronic fatigue. And some of it is not just about chronic fatigue. A lot of this stuff is everyone's got like inner critic, boundaries, whatever, anxiety, depression, where it comes from, childhood trauma, acute childhood traumas, all that kind of stuff. And then I found this guy. Oh, it was actually a girl that I went. So I was looking for. So after COVID happened, COVID like moved me out of London because it ended up I was living with one of my best mates, Barney, from an incredible Manchester band who you might have heard of, Sonic Boom Six. Have you heard of Sonic Boom
Oh, no,
Six?
no, I'm not familiar with them. No, but I'll check them out.
Mate, check them out. They're awesome.
Mm.
I met them at uni, but they're really like they're brilliant musicians, and like Barney's one of my best mates, and we were living together. But then COVID meant that we were both at home all the time because I work from home, and it was like, can't do this. Moved to Acton for a bit. That was insane for whatever reasons. So I ended up living near, like in the countryside for a year, thinking the country will heal me or whatever. Near Matlock Bath, Cromford. It's a place called Cromford. I mean, that was mad in itself. You know, I might tell you about that later. But and I was looking for like I was always looking for anything to try and help me feel better from this fucking fatigue, whatever the hell it was. And obviously, I'd learned all these nebulous things. And then I found some yoga for chronic fatigue. I was looking on YouTube, and this girl came up from my school. I didn't know her, but she was like 2 years younger than me. And she had chronic fatigue. And she was talking about this thing called the Gupta process. It's this guy called Ashok Gupta. And so I had a session with her, and she told me about this guy. And as soon as he told me what it was, as soon as he was explaining what it was, I was like, that's it. That's exactly what's going on. So basically, and fibromyalgia is the same, chronic fatigue, a lot of sensitivities to like smells and all this kind of stuff that can trigger your physiology into some kind of like freeze state or pain. And it's basically your amygdala and your insula, which deal with fight or flight, become highly reactive and highly sensitive and highly reactive. So for me, it was like my brain would read danger. These old, quick parts of my brain would read danger from just looking at my diary or whatever. And, and so like, and then it would shut you into freeze state, me into freeze state. And then it reads the signal saying I knew something was wrong. And then your brain and your body are like stuck in a loop of like something's wrong. Because if you have flu, all the sniffing and feeling like shit, that's the symptoms that your body's going, you need these symptoms to stay still so that we can make you get better. So it's a similar thing. It's like this weird trip loop in the brain of like you're not so it's free fight, everyone knows fight or flight, but freeze is the thing with fatigue. And
But what is it?
so
What is it physically? You just like because I've heard about fatigue. I don't know much about it. I'm learning a lot today. But what it physically, what happens to you? What can and can't you do
just
while you're having
like
this? So,
mine, like it can be horrendous. It can completely shut you down. And I've had it where my brain has shut me down almost to like non-verbal, can't move. But mine was like a constant state of like tiredness, doesn't like sort of like a shit hangover, but like a fizziness in the brain and the body, fog, like lethargy, like no, like it kills your spirit. like the spirit that lights you up, you know, like the thing that animates a human to be alive, it like kills that. And then, you know, you throw in like years of depression and like, so it's a kind of anxiety. That's what I think it is. It's like, and because like after when my mum died and like it just the whole, I hated being in Sheffield. I didn't feel safe anywhere. I was like frightened to death of bumping into my ex-girlfriend because the thing. So I mean, another thread of this is like, when I was living in the countryside, I thought it was going to be this like nice chill thing, but it ended up being like, you know, like a walkabout where they send you into the Australian outback and you have all these, like, that's what it was like because I would walk out my front. I mean, one day I walked out the front door and there was a lizard on my doorstep. I didn't even know we had lizards. Like, I was in the sticks, right? And I couldn't just go for a walk to chill out. I'd go for a walk and have these like downloads about, oh, that thing happened when I was less than one. And that meant my nervous system has always felt like this and yada, yada. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you know that one. I mean, it's quite well known now, like shit that we are dealing with as adults came from when we were children and how we read situations or how our nervous systems were impacted or whatever. So I've always had this like panic, very quick to sort of panic, and it would look like anger or frustration, or quite often it would descend into depression because I just never felt safe and I never felt great about myself. And this week I'm in this. There's a group in Sheffield called the Sheffield Coaching Exchange of all these coaches in Sheffield, all various different coaches. And this woman came and spoke. It was Neurodiversity Week, and I'm currently going through like an ADHD thingy because I didn't think I had ADHD until someone lent me some of their meds, and everything was so much easier. So, and this woman who came and gave this talk about about neurodiversity, she was like, certain people are very sensitive to certain things, and those things then become draining. But also, we often read them as there's something wrong with me. So I'm like really sensitive to my inner world. It's called interoception, like how I feel in my body, but also I'm really, really aware of my emotions all the time. But I've fucking masked it, which is exhausting. And I'm trying to be not just be normal. And you see everybody else. Because on the face of it, it's like swans. Everyone's like swans, right? Everyone looks normal. And the more I've gone into my stuff, the more I'm like, oh my God, everyone's fucking messed up in different ways. And now I'm coaching. It's just like, okay, you sort of see the things that everyone's dealing with inside silently and then help people to heal and calibrate. And then, like, kind of, so for me, coaching is about what's getting in the way and what being honest about what you want, being clear about what you want, and like calibrating to who you really are. So the more I've learned about myself, and like, a thing for me is like I'm really unflinching. Like I can't bear any kind of like waste of time. It's like, what are we doing here, and why are we not doing that one thing right now? There's all this sort of like wishy-washiness. So for me, on doing my work, it's like, especially having had chronic fatigue, and there's no Sunday afternoon off it. It's like, so I got really militant about going for the, like a dog with the bone, go for the jugular. What there's some phrase, it's like wherever you want to look the least is the place you need to look first, or something like that. And I'm really good at that because I was not trying to figure this shit out basically. So uh God, I'm
It's
knackered now.
like being
I'm
in
knackered
the.
now.
I don't sorry, mate. I'll speak for 1 minute if that's all right, because there's a lot to unpack there, mate.
Yeah, go for it.
We do speak to a lot of musicians that do struggle with their mental health, particularly for one. That's just common in the music industry, and I don't know why
Yeah.
that is. But perhaps it's the type of character, a more creative
Well,
mind can be open to that stuff. I presume. I don't know.
I can definitely talk to that. Like, so I was talking to PT, who you might know, the bass player from Alvarez King's
Yeah.
Sheffield band, and he was telling me because they flew close to the sun. They were signed to, I think, Sonic, one of the big labels. They were
Mm.
flown out to LA. They were courted, and they fell through the gaps like so many people in record labels do. It's just like it was like so close, and then the team just changed. And it's like, sorry, who are you? And like, we're the Alvarez Kings. We've been working with the label for 2 years. Sorry, we don't know you. I'll see you later. And he was saying it's traumatized him. And for me, the same. And I think there's a number of different things. I think, yes, artists are often more sensitive, which is why we can divine these things to put into music or whatever. It's also like an external validating loop. And for me, like, so now I've started coaching. One of the things that people need is like to see their own agency. So you do something and then you get a feedback of like, well done, you've done something good. So like if you're in some kind of daily job to a degree, some people hate their jobs, some people, but at least you're turning up and someone's going, yeah, thanks, mate. Now you can go home. And then you get paid.
Yeah.
But with me in music, like I spent years like literally crippling myself because the last album was when I remember specifically. So there's a guy called Luke Fizzle who was doing some of the kind of engineering for some of the recording parts. And I'm such a perfectionist. I'd written this song about my mum. It's called "Say Goodbye," and it's got this quite difficult guitar part, and it's on electric guitar, and it's like I can handle it, but it was like right on the edge of handling it.
Yeah.
And I was literally like punch. I don't know if have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that Scouse guitar player? He's like on these memes where he's like fucking hell. He's like punching. He's trying to learn the guitar
Yeah.
and he's punching his hands. That's what it was like. And I've got a picture of me somewhere because after I managed to get the take, like that's it. I collapsed. Like I was absolutely exhausted. And it was like looking back now, that was like a microcosm of my entire life. Was that so I've put all that in, and then you put the album out, and no one cares.
Yeah.
So it's like this constant, especially now, because everybody's trying to, we've been trained by culture and media to like want attention. And it's just like, it's so difficult. There's so few people like in your corner, especially like as me, when I've just done so much of my career independently. I've had record labels, I've had management a couple of times. Whenever anybody said, I'll get behind you, it was like a whole lease of life, like, oh, someone believes in me. But, the flip side of that is I didn't really believe in me. I sort of did and I sort of didn't. And so I think it's kind of lonely, it's sensitive. You like, because for me, it was like I was putting my life and soul, like I recorded, like control freak, but like, I did full on like Stevie Wonder shit. It's like I would write everything, I would record every part. I'd sit here, I'd come up with the bass line, then I'd record it, get the sound. I learned sound tech. Then I'd come up with a second guitar part and whatever, and mix it and whatever, and then try and put it out like fucking. And then to put it out on Spotify and nobody really care, or the same five people on my Facebook or Instagram liking it. After years of putting the effort in, it's like that is not a recipe for good mental health. Do you know what I mean? And then, musicians going out drinking or whatever. Like I had to stop drinking because of the chronic fatigue, but that doesn't help because before that I'd go out drinking, trying to be out and about with people, whatever, and you're hungover for 3 or 4 days. Like it's not a great recipe for good mental health.
Well, I think one of the worst things about the modern music industry is that I think the overall art, the music has suffered because bands have to bring an album out every year to have something to tour to make the money to pay the people back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where and they need an excuse to go out every year, and that excuse is a new album these days.
Yeah.
And to bring a new album and bands that just seem to, oh, we've got a new album out. Well, you've just finished touring your last one. I appreciate they can do things in the meantime and stuff, but to have the pressure of having to bring an album out every year, I just think the quality of music in general suffers from that.
Yeah. Well, and also like I was listening to Moby on a podcast, and he was like, he feels sorry for musicians now. And so Lily, my friend, um, searching for Lil, sorry, Lily, she's like trying to put an album together, but she's also trying to make rent. And he
Yeah.
was saying like when he started in New York in the 80s or whatever, like 90s, it was like 50 quid rent. So they could just fuck around all week, all month, just like hanging out, making music, hanging out, making music. And that's where art comes from. Art comes from having space in your life, in your brain to sit and focus. Like I read a couple of years ago, I read Rick Rubin's book, and it was like, because also the whole arch of music now is about, it's not about just make the music, it's about I make the music, then I have to promote it. So everyone's had to be, and because like not many people can have the space to do a whole, not many people can afford to do an album a year and then go out, like very few people can do that. So everyone's like trying to make rent, then trying to write, record, and then suddenly they've got to be marketing and record labels. You know what I mean? And it's like everyone's knackered.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and like yeah, and people's mental health suffer because yeah, I mean the biggest thing, one of the biggest things is just like financially, and the fact, and also like the fact that loads of people want to do it. Like when I was younger, like pre-Arctic Monkeys was when I sort of was in bands and stuff, and everyone wanted to be a DJ, and there weren't loads of pubs having music on. And then the Arctic Monkeys happened, and everyone wanted to be an indie band, and every Sheffield pub was like, "We've got music on," and I think that like devalued because then people who go to watch stuff were like, "Well, I can just go down the pub, any pub, and there's music in the corner." And I think that made everybody think that like mediocre music was, that was what music was. I mean, it all just became really confusing. But the Rick Rubin book, what I was talking about, because I'd spent like flogging myself to do that sort of cycle of like try really hard to do it, and then you do it, and then you try and promote it, and then you get disappointed because nothing's really happened. Why am I not fucking famous and surrounded by gorgeous women and loads of money? Like, right, well, let's do it again. And then um the Rick Rubin, and obviously then I got chronic fatigue, and like that kind of killed the whole process off. And then I was just like dead in the water, going, "What am I even doing with my life? Am I even a musician?" But you know, like that's when the big, for me, that's when big life, like what do you call it, like questions the meaning of life. That all kind of started to really kick in. But I read the Rick Rubin book, and his whole thing is like just make the music for the sake of the music, and it was like, oh, I completely forgot about that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just sit and have this. And actually, like, so I had a really strange experience recently that ended up. I mean, I don't know how spiritual you are. I'm like super spiritual and see the. I don't know what's going on behind the veil, but there's something going on behind the veil, and it all ended up with these magic mushrooms that I found next to where we'd scattered my mother's ashes, and I had them. And then I kind of like I hadn't had mushrooms for ages, and I was like, I couldn't remember what you did. I was like getting stuff ready, like art stuff or whatever, and then it was just like, oh no, you just lay very still. So I was like laid down for 2 hours, and then I came out of that and I picked up my guitar and went into writing mode because it had taken these like plants, these magic plants, to just calm my brain down and put me in that magical creative space. And I was just like, oh, it takes me, I'm so busy all the freaking time trying to keep up with my agenda in life that I forget to just stay calm, take some minute to get in flow state and just let stuff come. Like there's just everything is so crammed and condensed these days in everybody's life with, you know, because everyone's getting squeezed to make fucking money.
Yeah.
2 jobs, 3 jobs. Where do you get time to write a fucking album?
Mm.
It's
So
hardcore.
how do you manage it today then? You know, because one thing that I found interesting is on your socials just recently, you felt like you felt like you had to make a video for the people that have supported your music through the years, and now you've got this new career in life coaching. You put a video out just explaining it to people.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like you had to do that?
Well, it wasn't because I think a few people read that. you know, like some of my really close friends, whatever, were like, you can
Yeah.
do whatever you want. I was like, I know I can, but I was just, what
Yeah.
I was doing was just saying it, basically, just calling myself out. Um, I mean, I've not been that great at, I don't, I want to get better at social media. I find it a little bit crass because I'm from the time before social media, so I find self-documentation a bit crass. But actually, with the coaching, I feel like I've actually got some value.
Mm.
But it was just the fact that so with the music stuff, I'm very intermittent on social media, and it's often more stuff that's not even to do with music because I find it hard to keep a consistency with doing anything musical. I know, like I've heard Noel Gallagher say the same thing. It's like sometimes I'm not doing music, and then I am doing music, and then there seems to be people out there on social media, or whatever, that are like always doing it, and it's like I'm not always doing that stuff. And with my shit, that has been very intermittent. Like I think well, I can't. I released a single maybe 2 years ago. I can't even remember, and I've got a bank of songs, like 9 songs that I want to record. And then it's been very bitty. Like I went to Lisbon and I met with some people out there. Some like Lisbon's an amazing city for like art and music. And just through a twist of fate, the woman who was like looking after my Airbnb, she was called Ul Piano, but that wasn't her name. Piano music, right? So that was her partner's name. But I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm a musician and I'm coming to have a look at Lisbon, potentially to live there or whatever. And she was like, "That's my partner's name, but he is also a musician and he's a producer." And so just through this twist of fate, they were in. You know, she took me to these open mics. Went to a couple of open mics, sang some songs. He took me to their studio, and it's like this wicked old school underground studio in Lisbon. And I went back and tried to record these new songs. And the new songs are very much about this like inner work, like very frank, almost like unpoetically talking about, there's a few musicians now. Well, it's quite, like Ren, for example, talking about mental health and being super authentic. So I had these songs and I wanted to record them, but it didn't quite work. The recordings didn't sound, the source audio wasn't great. I tried to mix them at my mate Foz's place in Big Dog Studios in Sheffield, and he was like, and we were both like, this is not sounding great. So, and then last year I wanted to record him with, I always forget his name. This is a producer in Sheffield. I can't remember his name. But my voice fucked. So I have got stuff going on, but then this live coaching is pushing
Yeah.
in, and that to me is lighting me up more
Mm.
than the music ever did, or got to the point where it's like it's not lighting me up the same way. But having said that, on the back of I think actually on the back of the Rick Rubin book of like just do shit for the sake of it, I ended up becoming a singer-songwriter because I had an acoustic guitar. I mean, that was lit. I never listened to acoustic singer-songwriters. I was like a rock kid and a sort of electronic music kid. So like in the late 90s and noughties, I listened to like hip hop or left field or um Prodigy, and before that, I'd listened to a lot of like rock music, so like classic stuff, Hendrix, Clapton, but then like Van Halen and Extreme and whatever. But I started writing songs just, oh, I tell you, it was more August and Everything After by Counting Crows that sort of opened me into like that world. But then, yeah, and so at uni, I had to sort of do some music. You have to do some music, right? So it was like, well, like, I've got a couple of songs. And then I was just telling this story the other day because I'm coaching this woman at the moment and she wants to be a comedian. I mean, she's incredible. Like the doors that she's opened in the first few sessions, but she wants to be a comedian and she's applied to this thing. It's in Manchester actually, like learn to be a comedian in 6 months or whatever. And the guy had said to her, "You've got something." And I was like, hang on to that because if someone, and this guy at my uni, I'd never really spoke to him. He was like, It was something to do with the live part department, but I always found him a bit like like a cool vicar. Do you know what I mean? Or like a cool teacher or something. But on the last day, he went, "Good luck, mate. You've got something," and it lit something up in me. And then I followed that. I had a few demos out of uni, but and then my sister had a contact, and then like I just emailed these poor guys, and they came back and said, "You're obviously very keen." So, and that's how it started with me. But I've always been more into electronic music and like the production. So, I read that. Sorry, this is might be a bit fucking round the houses now, but I read the Rick Rubin book, and it reminded me that you're supposed to just sit down and enjoy it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do what lights you up. So, and also on all my albums, there was always one or two tracks that were a bit odd. They weren't sort of songwritery. They were a bit weirdly produced or had like electronic beat. Those were the tracks that I loved. And looking back, that's the avenue because I was doing a singer songwriter was me trying to be commercial. So the long and short of that is one of my really good mates. He's like my work wife. Because through the years, I've always had to do stuff to survive as a musician. So I've done a lot of like library work, library music, or corporate stuff. You know, in the gaps. And my mate Rich Lewis is in. He does this thing called Productions, and he does like he's like worked for FIFA and fucking Disney, all massive, massive people. But he's like my work wife. Like he's the only person that always picks up the phone, whatever's happening. And me and him were like, let's just do something for our sake because we've spent so much of our life, and he does it all the time. You're working for people that are like, they'll give you feedback like there needs to be more melody in the drums, and you're like, these people are fucking idiots. Like, it doesn't make sense. But we started to do, and he's the same as me. He was like left field prodigy, all that kind of stuff. So we put this project together called Sovereign States. We started about a year and a half ago, and we've released like 5, 6 tunes. So it's spinning plates. Like I've still got these tunes that I want to record, and I want to record them just me and the guitar. I want them to be that real, like, testimonial, one man and his life story kind of thing, because I think there's value in the lyrics. I think I've played them to a number of different people. And like when I first came back to Sheffield, God rest his soul, Martin Bedford. Do you remember Martin Bedford?
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. Met him loads of times.
Yeah,
Beautiful
so
guy.
he turned up in a pub I was doing a covers thing in. I mean, you can't. I mean, he's passed away last year, bless him. But he turned up. You can't miss him because he's got like a
Big art.
massive cowboy hat and everything. And he was like, "I want to put you on a gig." And it'd been so long since I'd done a gig of my stuff. But for someone in Sheffield to come and recognise I like what you do, so I did a gig at this place called Haggler's Corner, and I played these new songs, but I had this new aspect because I'd been through all this shit. This was before I was coaching, but I'd been through all this shit and knew I knew stuff about what it was to be a person. And so I'd explain the songs, and people were coming up to me after and been like, "That fucking put me in tears, man." So I've got these things that I feel like, but it's
Yeah.
finding the time, man, because I want to start the career. And then we've got a track with Steve Edwards, who's like really well known Sheffield singer, and that's like lurking in the background with the sovereign state stuff. And then yeah, it's finding the time and like surviving, man. Like so often I feel like I don't want to do anything, but that's because I need to not do anything. So last week,
I felt like Ian.
so
I felt like you were going to tell me that like looking back on a busy career that you've slowed down a little bit, but no chance.
no, it's just changed. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
so at the moment, like, so I'm in the studio now, and like, so I'm doing some tracks for MasterChef, which is through Rich, my work
Mm.
wife, and it's like it, like the tunes are. It's just like kind of you call it mild peril, right? But it's so nice to just sit here and do something that's not. It's not my jam. And I'm gonna get paid. I know I'll get paid. But it's like I have to do this. It's kind of fun, but I have to do this because I need to make money, whatever. And then I've started this. So I'm running a course in creative recovery in Barnsley, this amazing little place called Creative Recovery, and they do all sorts of stuff in the community for people that struggle with their mental health. A lot of it's like arty stuff, and I've come in, and I like they're like, we want you to do it through music, and I'm like, I just want to sit and talk to these people. So we're doing a bit of drumming, and then we're talking and reflecting, and I'm getting them to use the written word, but also this is where I'm singing these songs to people in a more like, here's this song and let's talk about the things that it reflects in you, and then how can you learn to sort of manage yourself better, what new skills can you learn there. So it's almost like I'm now seeing my lyrics and my creativity as this, like, as literally, I mean, not to over aggrandize myself, but like a way to help heal, like, because one of the biggest things is, I think, in the human condition, everyone feels alone until you see someone else that's got the same or similar to you, and then suddenly like, oh my God, I'm not a freak. Do you know what I mean? And it's so important. And I'm not shy about being really open. To be honest, I probably overshare, have done, but it's like I've done a lot of men's work. So one of the first things that kind of got me set on this like inner journey, whatever you want to call it, I went on this really intense weekend retreat called the Mankind Project, which is all about shadow work. It's all linked with Carl Jung, Jungian philosophy. It's fucking intense work, and that set me off. And ever since then, I've been in. You do this like it's called you're initiated. It sounds a bit culty, but it's not. Everyone should do it. There's a female counterpart to it, but all men should do this Mankind Project, because it, for the first time, I met men in a way that was like, ah, these are like brothers. Whereas before, I'd never trusted men, never felt safe, because men aren't. We over the generations, men have not been given the tools to be authentic and open. It's why we all stand. Well, I don't. I hate football, but it's why men all stand around watching a screen touch, screaming at football. But everyone's still struggling with their own inner world. Anyway, my point there is there's this thing called secondary benefits. So you see other men doing their shadow work or whatever it is, and they'll say something that's really difficult for them, and then you're like, oh, I needed to hear that. You get little bits of gold from it. So kind of with these songs, which, at some point I want to record them when I get 5 minutes, but letting that out helps other people to see that they're not alone. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things, is like, even in like close relationships, people feel alone. People are trapped in this like web of what they think they should be doing, and they're not living up to it, and not really knowing themselves very well, totally not accepting themselves. So we're all trying to do all of these things to trying to live up to all that shit, instead of with the chronic fatigue. It's like there's a line of therapy called radical acceptance. It's like, the bottom drawer in the kitchen, no one wants to look in it. It's like, get that fucking drawer open, get it on the floor. What are we dealing with? Where did it come from? How do we overcome it? And when you start to do that, there's another thing that seems to happen with coaching, is like external permission. Everyone wants to be their own authority, but no one feels like it, because we were born out of a situation where our parents told us what to do and school tells you what to do. And there's no point in life where you graduate and now you can do whatever you want. And you mix in with like everyone trying to keep up with bills and all that kind of stuff. But so with this girl, this woman I'm coaching, she's because also I'm like, so I don't, I'm so non-judgmental, because I'm fucking weird and I've done loads of crazy shit, whatever, and I've got to the point where I accept myself completely. Like, none of it, because that's the other thing, like forgiveness. Like, I didn't program myself, like nature and my parents and culture did, and I was just literally, and most people are working until you start waking up. You're working on like a subconscious, so you're like a robot. You don't really know what you're doing. You're just sort of doing what the best with what you've got. So when you start to wake up, You start to realize all these things are fucking a bit weird and a bit wrong. But so you have to forgive yourself in order to then start to allow yourself to want the things that you actually do want. And these are all these quiet voices that are inside everybody that are going against the grain of like what you're trying to keep up with and what you're trying to pretend and all these different faces that you put on. So this woman, she wanted, I said to her, what do you really like? What, if you got to your deathbed, what would you regret not doing? And she was like, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And she's like, I feel like an idiot. And I was like, I don't fucking care. Be a stand-up comedian then.
Yeah.
And so like just having someone else around, like it's like having the perfect parents, which nobody had because our parents didn't have perfect parents. To just go, and it sounds a bit trite now, but like, what do you want to be? And like seeing, so I've got two nephews, 9 and 7, and I couldn't love them more. And they're so different. And when, I know a lot of people who've got kids have the same thing. It's like, yes, you sort of like you give them stuff, but also they come out with they're already there with their sort of like their natural inclinations. And like for me, realizing that, so with chronic fatigue, there's an amazing book called Finding Your Own North Star by Martha Beck, and she kind of iterates this thing of like people get ill when they're not moving towards, when they're pushing water uphill with regards to who they are and what their natural skill sets are, because they feel like, well, I should be like that, or I saw that thing, and so now I aspire to that. And the radical acceptance is like, no, I'm actually good at this shit. So calibrating to that and moving forwards like that, if that hopefully that makes sense, and realizing like I get ill, so I still get fatiguey symptoms now when I'm pushing against my natural inclinations. So, for example, I've just started this course, and it's like a 6 week course. And last week I started to realize I was getting fatigued because it was like another weight in my life. I love it, but it's like now I've got to do a bit more admin every week. And I basically woke up on Sunday and I was like, I need to walk out that front door and not know what I'm doing all day. And I went for a walk, I went for a Starbucks, I went and got an amazing sandwich from this place on Ecky Road. Um, I ended up, and then halfway through the day, I ended up in this cafe with this amazing brownie and a nice matcha latte. And my brain went, and I realized that I needed this. So, like, the flip side of that is I was pushing myself too hard and I was getting ill. I
Yeah.
was starting to get fatiguey, and I needed to take some time off to do nothing. So, one of my values is like, freedom. So like waking up with no agenda whatsoever. And I whack myself around the head with, probably because I've got ADHD,
Wow.
which I think this fucking podcast is probably of it. So tell me about you, Carl.
Well, the next question I had were about the life coach, that kind of thing. So yeah, teach me something. Where would you start with me? And one thing that I did want to say is that, like, I'm probably not on my own, but when you see the term life coach, you always think, ooh, are they a bit? I always think my scam alert goes up a little bit when I see
Yeah.
life coach. I'm quite cynical about that kind of stuff. Help me see
Yeah. Well,
that and move through it.
it, the thing with, so I did a certified course because what I realized was I'd got to the point where I'm so focused inwards and backwards trying to
Mm.
heal shit. And I was getting this flavor of actually one of the really important things for people to light up is future. And having had fatigue and dealing with all this grief and inner stuff, I'd forgotten about forwards and purpose and like where am I aiming? And I was gonna get a life coach, and then I was like, maybe I can. I was working with a fatigue coach, and she was like, I think you know enough to help other people. And like, this is a really common thing that lights people up, is like being of service in the world. And actually, like, so I also work in mental health, and I love just supporting people who are struggling. I like it. It lights me up. I can see it energizes me. So I did this certified course, which was linked with an international accreditation board, the IAPCNM. And I get it's because like there is coaches everywhere, and you don't have to be accredited or anything. You can just rock up tomorrow and say I'm a coach. So I did the first course, and then it was really important for me to get proper accreditation. So in the autumn last year, I became fully accredited practitioner coach, and it is a bit cheesy and like what is a life coach,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you, I don't, you've not heard of Tony Robbins, but like when you see Tony, there's a couple of documentaries about him. When you see him do the work, and this is like how I coach, it's like the reality that we're all dealing with inside is not how we play our life game. It's all driven from there, but we're often avoiding a lot of shit. And if you avoid it, it's you're just gonna come up against it all the time. So my first thing is a couple of kind of routes in. I mean, firstly, I mean, you know, you probably don't want to do it on a podcast, but you maybe do. It's like, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? So start with that.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't feel like I necessarily struggle with anything. Having a hard time with my mum at the minute. She was diagnosed with cancer recently. Uh, so,
Right. Okay.
so that kind of thing like has stopped me like planning as much for this year to be more around for that. I work full time. I do RGM a lot of hours on top of that. Um, RGM is my creative output. If I didn't have it, I think I'd be in a worse place off as a human.
Yeah.
That's kind of like where I sit with it all, really. Without that's where I sit.
So I mean, because the other thing as well is like, you might not need life coaching.
Yeah.
For me, it's like people who are feeling like there's like these internal itches. They want more. They feel like they're sleepwalking in some parts, or they want to connect with an authentic self a bit more. Like I'm trying to help people get internal clarity so they can get external clarity and like light up. So for me, my mission statement is I expand into the greatness of God and help others wherever I can. You know, and I'm not religious at all. Like I'm quite any sort of dogmatic shit, I just switch off. But I know there's something more. So like for me, it's like that's where I'm going with it all. But my next kind of question would be like, what things do you come up against that get in the way of your living your life?
Um, I think generally over the last few years I've decided to be more reliable as a mate. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. Where in the past I kind of regret not doing as many things or being a bit scatty and just a bit like, oh yeah, say I'm going to do this thing, knowing in the back of my head I'm not. I think I've like committed to be a better person by being more reliable around other people, and I'm quite proud of that as a thing that I've got a lot better at over the last few years.
Yeah. Well, accountability for a
Yeah.
man is really important. And I know, like, with my own dad, like, I haven't spoken to my dad in 10 years. And one of the things is, like, he's not a bad man, but he's just, and his accountability is not great. And having done a lot of men's work, and I'm in a group that we meet regularly, and what we check in every time with an accountability round because it's so important for well everybody, but like men to
Yeah.
be accountable because it gives you the sense of self pride as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds, Carl, it sounds like you're absolutely sorted, so you
I,
don't need my
I
services.
fucking don't, mate. I don't know. I say I'm not, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird one. I've never been like a proper deep thinker. I do compartmentalize whatever that word is. I do think about things quite a lot, and what I have done a lot is like over the last couple of years or so is a lot of exercise. I always got at gym and stuff, and that's
Yeah,
where that's where I do think things through. And so I've been a cunt there. I've been all right. I've been a twat there. I reflect a lot and recognize when I've been a twat and kind of like think right, okay, I can do better there. Because I do think that kind of stuff goes on in my head a lot.
yeah. I mean, so I read a book recently which is called The Will to Change, and it's about the patriarchy, and it's I mean, I highly recommend it to it. So when you say patriarchy, to me, it was like over there somewhere is about five extremely rich men who take advantage of women or something. It's such a limited idea of patriarchy, but this book explains how pervasive the sort of patriarchal thinking, which is just like a model of thinking. It's not necessarily men. It's like a sort of like it's an ideology almost, and how it's perpetuated by both men and women unknowingly, and then it's the negative impacts on men. And I was like, I read it, I was like, I did not know that I'd been a victim of that. So for example, like performance, you've got to keep doing stuff, you've got to perform, is this patriarchal thinking. And like I'm knackered all the time because I feel like I can't just stop, go back to Sunday where I just stopped and my brain was healthy. So, and one of the things that it brought up was like men have systematically been disallowed to express and have feelings. So, like now there's this sort of a prevailing notion in the word of like of women being like, men just need to start talking about their emotions, and that's like going for guys, generations of like men, dads. My dad could never express his feelings. That's like how is a man supposed to know how to express his? It's like going up to a Chinese person saying just speak Italian. They were never taught Italian, so that would be maybe. And I'd like, so I would probably poke you around there to see if any of that is like bothering you, because like the more you were speaking, the more you were like, well, actually that, because you threw some quite negative judgments of yourself there. I've been a cunt there and I've been a cunt there. So
Yeah.
I would try and see like how much that bothers you, and then like go towards where it came, where this stuff comes
Yeah.
from, and like forgiveness. But it kind of sounds like you're doing all right,
I
but
think so.
maybe not. I don't know.
Like, well,
Maybe
I
your
don't know,
thoughts.
like booze. Like historically, I've always liked a drink,
Yeah,
and there was a period in my life when I was drinking to excess and blacking out, like and just like being like just falling over and just being a fucking mess and letting
yeah,
people down really. But like I've kind of like when I go through stages like where I feel like I'm letting people down, I'm quite good. I do beat myself up about it to the stage where I feel like like I've done that enough now. You're just gonna have to be better at not doing that. If
yeah.
you know what I mean. It's like I do beat myself up a lot about those days and how I was to certain people. Um, but you know,
What is?
I'm not a bad person, but I beat myself up for situations I've put myself in, and uh, just I beat myself up a
Well,
lot.
that bit, yeah. I mean, so that would be one of the core things that I'd go on like with you. We beat ourselves up, man, and like fucking hell. I didn't even really realize it. So I got this friend called Sarah Foster. She's a musician as well. She came up from Brighton to do some sessions here, and she said this thing. She's quite wise. She's done all the work. Daisy in the Dark is her music stuff. She had chronic fatigue. That's how we met. And we was trying to do a session, and something was, I can't remember what was wrong, and I was fucking beating myself up. But because she was in the room and heard me, and she said, "Don't speak to my friend like that." So she triangulated the inner critic was talking to me and beating me up. So that voice that beats you up about shit, just to hear her say that was like someone's just advocated for like these like my part. Do you know, I don't know if you know about parts therapy, and we've
No,
got
no,
these different voices going on, and they all come from different places. So like, so the person that's beating you up is probably the inner critic, and the inner critic is like trying to protect you in certain ways, but it becomes really unhelpful. So when you were saying that, it took me to the point where, so like I'm quite a big user of this inner child stuff, and I realized stuff that was said to me, and my mum was great, but stuff was still said to me that made me feel like there was something wrong with me, and I have lived, and these things are so subconscious that you don't even notice it. But I've lived my entire life thinking there's something wrong with it, and either trying desperately to overcome that by being bigger and better in some way, or also trying to prove it. And I think on some kind of weird, deep psychological level, um, having chronic fatigue is like me proving there's something. I told you there's something wrong with you. Told me there's something wrong with it, and now I'm because we want to, whatever our parents say to us or people around us, what, like maybe some bullies in the program, there's a horrible part of us that wants to prove that right. So I've done a lot of inner child work, and it's took me ages to realize like you're innocent. I was innocent, and like that's self-forgiving, and then reparenting that part of you like with love and like acceptance and like, because anything that you're doing, and it sounds like you're taking it, you're now taking accountability for it, and it takes, in my experience, it's like sort of mid 30s, maybe becoming earlier now because people are starting to understand, is when people start to wake up to themselves. And up until that point, we're just fucking behaving on a set of rules that were given to us. Or because when you're a
I
kid,
think I was
something will
about
happen.
40. I think when I got to 40, I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this is it.
Like
And
all my 30s were just quite wild. So
yeah, well, this is it. And you're like, you're trying to live up to things. You're trying to take on personas that you feel like.
yeah.
I've always, I thought I was some kind of rock star. I am so not a fucking rock star, but I was trying to be, because when I was younger, I looked up to rock stars. Now when I read, if I saw the singer of Van Halen, David, I can't remember what he's called. The hell's he called? Anyway, and also like Steve and Tyler on the Joe
Mm.
Rogan podcast, and like listen to them talk about rock. It's tragic. It's fucking tragic. And you just see these broken men. And those were the men I looked, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. And it's like,
I watched the Red Hot Chili Peppers new documentary on Netflix that's just come out about their bass player that passed away, and just mental.
the
Like that.
guitar, no,
It's, yeah,
the guitar player, Hilal Slovak.
yeah, 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 yeah. Have you seen it? Have you seen it yet? The new
I've not
documentary
seen
that's
it.
come out.
No, I love. I mean, like Red Hot Chili Peppers. The whole reason I've got tattoos is because of them. Like that was seminal in like I want to do that, and I wanted to be that kind of like what? Well, Anthony Kiedis, sort of Lothario, whatever. But you listen to him talk, and you're like, you're a fucking lunatic. What the? So, but it takes so long for us to start reflecting. But then there's another thing where I see it in the men's work, like cognitive dissonance. Like going back to that thing I said much earlier, like the place you least want to look is the place you need to look first. And it takes a lot of brave bravery to look there. But actually, when you look there, it's like, and you do it more often, you realize like it's not, it's just being honest and authentic, and actually like looking at dealing, giving yourself the credit to go, who the fuck am I and what happened to me? And like what's not working and what's been really unhealthy, and like how do I start looking after myself? Like you would a fucking kid. We put ourselves through so much shit that you would never ever do to a child. We push ourselves into rooms and situations that you would never do to your child. And it might sound a bit try and a bit soft, but it's like if you're constantly at odds with that sort of dynamic, you're just going to keep pushing yourself and tripping over and coming up against things and doing behaviors that you're not particularly proud of. So, yeah, it's the inner child stuff, and realizing you're sort of dealing with this like kid that he didn't know, like my inner child, he didn't know. And like our parents didn't know. So they said stuff to us. They gave us shit that we didn't need, or they didn't give us stuff that we did need. And I coach and I live from a very idealized place, but, and it's never going to happen. But I'm trying to help people to come back. And when I coach people from that idealized sort of like almost like paternal loving place, you can see people soften and lighten up, and they start to work in these more animated ways of living in more purpose and more fun, and you start to still like, why have I been putting up with this shit? Like this, I obviously doesn't mind me talking about it, but like I probably shouldn't. But like she's come out of this relationship and she's just like, what have I been doing putting up with that for years? People have just put up with shit for years and years.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Well,
I can't even remember what the fucking
how,
question was.
how close is like therapy to life coaching?
Well, so it's not therapy, and
Yeah.
it's very
It feels
important
like
that.
it feels like, I don't know, just that little chat that we had that I enjoyed, by the way. Thank you. But just that little kind of chat felt a little bit therapy, but I don't know. I've not had
Well,
therapy
it's
before.
so I'm not a trained therapist conservatively, but I have been through so much therapy and so many different types of
Yeah.
therapy. The thing, I would not go somewhere where I don't feel like I can hold it. So but when you're coaching, you've got to look a bit into inwards and backwards, and then kind of keep it going forwards. But I did some stuff with a guy who was a trained life coach but used to be a therapist, and he did this like inner critic stuff and parts work, and it for me that's where it really helps. And with the experience that I have, direct experience that I have got, I can go there and I can help people, and I've seen it happen loads of times. Because otherwise, if you don't go into the deeper levels and start to understand it and work with some of that and trying to heal it or manage it, whatever you're trying to, because with coaching, it's like goals and plans and goals and plans. If you don't deal with what's going on inside, you're just going to keep fucking up your goals and plans because this stuff is going to keep tripping you up. And I think, like, in a grander scheme for me, it's like, I think human beings are waking up to themselves and what we are and what's going on inside. We still live in this very two-dimensional, shallow world in front of us, but people, and I think AI will actually, like, people are going to trust what they see on screen so little that they're going to be forced to the real world, which will be difficult, but it's like we're cleaning that shit out. That's just, we're all living on our own traumas with a small T or a big T, but uh we're also living on top of generational trauma. And it's like I think we're cleaning that stuff out. So with me, it's like that's what I'm trying to help people do. And I see it in the men's work all the time. It's just like we're evolving
Yeah.
through self-awareness and self-acceptance and whatever.
Where can people get in touch with you if they want to be coached, mate, or just want to have a chat, or how do you set it up? Do you like,
That
is it just like a
that's the polite way of saying, right, enough, shut up now, Ian.
yeah, no, not at all, man. No.
So probably the best way, so hello at ianbrittcoach.com is,
I'll put a link in the description for people to be able to click
I'll
straight to your
send you a
info.
link because
Yeah.
I haven't got a proper full on website, but I've
Yeah.
got a link in the IAPCNM, which is the International
Right.
Accreditation
Yes.
board. I've got like a directory link on there, and also you can kind of read. There's like a little bit of blurb on there which tells you a little tiny bit about who I am, but also like it asks the questions that if you sort of answer yes to those, like that, I'm the person that can help you, and a little bit about how we would do that. So that's probably the best
Yeah.
point. And
Cool.
also like social just Google Ian Britt, like Instagram or whatever, Facebook, and message me, and someone can just have a free chat. If
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've got experience in music, but I've also got, I don't want to just look after musicians,
Yeah.
but I can specifically help people there. But chronic fatigue or whatever, just if anything that I've said kind of sparks any kind of like maybe this guy can help, then just get in touch. I'll give you some stuff so you can put it in the link,
Yeah, man.
but just
Lovely.
get in touch for a free chat.
Well,
And
thanks
if
for
you,
everybody for joining us for another edition of the podcast. A different one. I've really enjoyed this chat, and I mean, genuinely, really enjoyed catching up with you. Not seen you for a few years, both from Sheffield and that, both
I had
living this life,
hair.
doing this
I
thing.
had
You had,
hair
did you?
last
Yeah,
time
you
you
had a
saw
hair,
me.
don't you? I wasn't grey then.
I know it's mad, isn't it?
Here we go. Here we go. But yeah, generally enjoyed catching up with you, mate, and just wish you all the best with your new projects. You know, keep doing the music, pal. You know, for anybody that hasn't heard your music, just go on Spotify and just see all those millions of players, and there's a reason why there's hundreds of millions of thousands and millions of players on there is because you're an amazing artist too, mate, and never forget that too.
Thanks, bruv.